morning. Good morning, everybody. This is August 1st. We have kind of a packed show. We have three main topics that we want to get into. And the overwhelming theme that we want to talk about today is the fertility collapse causes and consequences. So good morning, Senator. I want to go ahead and kick it off to you since we have a lot to talk about.
Good morning. We're going to be talking about the fertility collapse, and we're also going to talk about how it impacts on what's going on with this border collapse involving Spain and Morocco in a place called Ceuta. And if you need to know how to pronounce it, just remember Ceuta. That's the way that you pronounce it. But in any event, let me kick this off, if I could, Morgan, with a fairly quick rundown on the population issue. There's a saying that demographics are destiny. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you don't have people, everything else evaporates, and so. Particularly starting in the West, but also in Asia, there is an ongoing population collapse that is very dramatic, and you know, you've got all these people running around saying, "Well, how can this be? You know, maybe there's not low cost housing, or maybe people don't have enough benefits of this." But baloney. I mean, people have reproduced during the most hideous times of history, but it's not happening sufficiently now. So anyway, we've got some interesting things. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops seldom weighs in on something of what I would consider things that interest me. I'm Roman Catholic, by the way. Practicing and so forth. So this is not an attack on the Catholic bishops, but typically, you know, they're, you know, in on open borders and all kinds of goofy stuff. But this one is very serious because there is now a very large drive with the Church unified to mobilize Catholics about the very rapid rise in the abortion rate, which is principally related to abortion-inducing drugs. So we had the overturn of Roe versus Wade, which allowed states now to set their own abortion policies. Well, what happened around this time, the Biden administration authorized the shipment by mail of abortion pills. Mifepristone is the principal one, and it works together with another drug called misoprostol. And what happens, the mifepristone is designed to weaken the baby in the womb, to make it vulnerable, to make it to where the other drug can induce delivery and force the child out where it suffocates because its lungs are not quite developed enough. These are not you know, children who are birth deformed or something, but these are well-developed, healthy little boys and girls who are just expelled from the womb and killed in massive numbers. And what the Biden administration did, they started this massive global industry of sending these abortion drugs. And at this point, about 6 of every 10 abortions in the U.S. are performed using the what I termed baby pesticides back when they were first discussed in the Virginia Senate. And but in any event, the Trump administration, interestingly, has not done any better than the Biden administration on this, because they approved a generic substitute for misoprostone, which makes it cheaper to distribute the killing drugs. And the Department of Justice has blocked the states that want to challenge the policy of allowing this mail order abortion. And so we have the Catholic bishops doing a very intense campaign, and they really mean business. It's the first time I've ever seen this done in Catholic churches. I work very hard on some issues like this principally with the Protestant churches, but this is the first time we've seen this, and they're signing up people, they're registering people to vote, and they're going to set up a very sophisticated platform where individuals can sign up, and then just in one click they can send simultaneous messages against these drugs to the pharmaceutical companies, to the brick and mortar pharmacies, and to the whole situation, to Congress. So just to wrap this up, there's a landmark study from the Lancet, highly authoritative in medical field, and Lancet projects that by 2050, 75% of all countries will fail to have enough births to maintain their population, and by 2100, 97% of all nations will begin to shrink from the lack of population. Now, the remaining population growth, and this is interesting, it's concentrated in Africa and in the Middle East. So we look at East Asia, where Japan's population has been collapsing. They lose 800,000 in population every single year. Their population declines by 800,000. South Korea holds the lowest population fertility rate at 0.72 per woman. You have to have 2.1 just to stay even. And China's population is shrinking consistently, and the population of China, which is one of the two biggest nations in the world, could drop by 50% by 2100. I mean, basically just sort of this collapse is tremendous. We see the same thing in Southern and Eastern Europe, Italy, Greece, Poland, losing 10 to 20% of their total populations by 2050 because of ultra low birth rates. Now, that will lead us to the next thing that we face, or that we're talking about, which is what's going on in Suda. So Morgan, I'll just let you pick it up from there, and we'll see. We're going to see some of the results of this disparity in population between what's happening in North Africa, in Morocco, which has double the fertility rate of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Morgan?
So, yes. So in Morocco, there is this portion of the land, the tip called Ceuta, which is actually in Spanish territory. When you initially sent this report to me, I kind of found it I was just reading the port. I had no really kind of understanding of Ceuta and the it's being a Spanish territory. And so a lot of the images that I was receiving were very strange, like these people arriving in like these inner tubes. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, maybe they didn't have to travel that far. That seems very strange if they had to travel that far. I believe 15 people did die on this when they were moving into Ceuta, but you have tens of thousands of people entering into Ceuta, which is Spanish territory, from Morocco. Pardon me, you have 19 dead. And so when we were speaking about this, I know you had some prior knowledge, so I want to ask you about that. And I kind of want to talk about some things that I had found, looking as a person who kind of really had no understanding of this dynamic, this area, kind of contentious relationship between the two areas, and really diving into it and finding interesting aspects of what's going on within American politics and Israeli politics that might have pushed some levers here in emboldening these actions.
Yes. So this thing just broke out without any warning. 60,000 Moroccans, almost all military-age young men, burst into Spanish-owned Ceuta. Now, Ceuta has a population, that one area has a population of 83,000 people. So think about it. In the span of a single day, you have the population of 83,000 swell by 60,000 foreigners who have poured in and basically kind of taken over the whole place. Now, here's the situation. Spain is on the other side of the Strait of Gibraltar. However, going back to 1450, there were places that have been held continuously, and they are, essentially like European property. It's not in Europe, but it's North Africa. But in 1415, Prince Henry the Navigator, at age 21, led a tremendously heroic attack on the fortress at Ceuta, which was an almost impregnable base, a fortress with high walls and so forth. And it was controlled by the Barbary pirates. Now, the Barbary pirates were under the control of the Ottoman Empire. This is when the Ottoman Empire, the Muslim Ottomans, controlled the Middle East, they controlled North Africa, and they were, just a constant threat to overwhelm all of Europe. What would happen, the Barbary pirates controlled the Mediterranean, and they controlled the seas around Spain, around Portugal, and they controlled often they would launch raids into England. And what they would do is they would capture, they would raid villages and so forth along the seacoast, and they would capture men and women that they would take as slaves. So the Muslims would enslave the Christians. The men were typically used for very, very hard, brutal labor, like as stone cutters, and also as galley slaves, where they would row the war galleys and that type of thing. And then the women were used as domestic servants and as sex slaves. They called them harems, which was sort of a nice way of saying that you could take Christian women and you could rape them, and that was the practice that was followed. Now, what happened then is you had, when the United States gained its independence, Up until then, the powerful British Navy had protected U.S. shipping from the Barbary pirates. But now that protection went away, and the Barbary pirates preyed on American shipping to the point where the new U.S. Congress had to spend 20% of all federal revenue paying tribute to the pirate states. In other words, they would pay off these states to suppress and to try to keep control of the raids on American ships and the enslavement of American seamen by the Barbary pirates. And so you had future presidents, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. They went to Europe and they met with the ambassador of Tripoli, which was one of the Barbary states. And they said, look, why are you attacking our shipping? And essentially what the ambassador said is that the Quran said that there was a duty and a right and an obligation to raid ships like this because the Christians were viewed as sinners, and that gave the right to attack the ships and to make slaves of all of the people, including the people who were being raided in the villages on the seashore. That wasn't our concern. Our concern was the ships at the point. But in any event, then the next thing is Thomas Jefferson, when he was elected president, I believe in 1801. He remembered the very nasty discussions he had with the ambassador of Tripoli, and so he convinced the Congress to fund the first fleet of heavy warships that the U.S. ever had, and he launched war against the Barbary pirates and the various states, which were essentially Libya, Algeria, and perhaps it was Morocco, but a string along the coast. So he went in and they had Marines aboard these early ships, and a detachment of Marines led a group of mercenaries 500 miles across the desert, and they launched a surprise attack led by Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon, and they captured the Barbary pirate stronghold at Tripoli. So the Marine Corps hymn starts off, it says, "From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli." The shores of Tripoli is where the U.S. attacked and defeated the Barbary pirates and relieved American shipping from being attacked and our sailors being sold as slaves, as Christian slaves, to the Muslim pirates. And to this day, Marine officers are issued the Mameluke sword, which I have myself, and it is a follow-up of the sword that was given to Presley O'Bannon when he won that great victory. So that's a little bit of the background. Mm-hmm. And so what it was is in 1415, then you have Prince Henry, the navigator of Portugal, and he led this great attack that captured Ceuta. And it was first Portuguese, later transferred to Spain, but it's been held by Portugal and Spain since 1415.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's important to note the historical background of it. When I was looking at this story that you gave me and kind of going through the weeds of what may be truly happening, we often know that sometimes the drama that is in the press and stuff maybe more than meets the eye. And so it reminded me of, I don't know if you remember the shocking recognition of what is now known as Somaliland, which is the northern tip of Somalia that also faces the Bab al-Mandab Strait, which on the opposite side is the Houthis. The only country to ever recognize Somaliland as its own entity is Israel. And within a week, Israel had placed a military base there. We can kind of infer that maybe it may be there to try and thwart some of the Houthis' blockade of what they had been doing towards the Red Sea. We've seen them kind of restart that now. So what we have right now is, when I was doing this investigation, was the 2020 Abraham Accords. Pardon me, let me take this off the screen while I find the slide. States that Situa and the province of Malia are in the territory of Morocco and will be, let me try and find the correct one. Pardon me while I'm trying to have talk. Here we go. Abraham Accords recognized that those two territories were in Moroccan rightful claim, and basically said how Israel can help them reclaim the north. So I found that to be very interesting. We know Morocco and is strategic allies since, I believe, 2004 with Israel, and Donald Trump has also claimed Morocco to be one of the greatest non-NATO allies.
This is stunning. I have to interrupt you a second. Here we are. This was won back from the Barbary pirates in 1415, and here the U.S. in just to take care of Israel, which didn't even exist until 1948. The country of Israel did not exist until 1948. And here we're willing to trade property of Spain that has been held by Spain and Portugal since 1415. Like, oh, well, that's, historically this belongs to Morocco. Give me a break. If you said we're going to put everything back into place on the global map as it stood in 1415, where would the United States be? Well, the United States would be gone. And who would get it? Well, Spain would get probably the biggest part of it. France would get a big part of it. There might, well, I don't know, 1450, and I don't think Great Britain or England even had anything here. So it is so obscene that for something where Christendom held those lands because they were protecting Christian lands against slavery, against Muslim slavery. And now here we say, oh, well, we don't care that we've held this since 1415. Israel needs it. We're gonna use it as trading material. Of course, the United States doesn't own it. It's owned by Spain. And here we are giving it away on behalf of Israel. It is just so offensive. It's unspeakable, really.
So through more trying to investigate this interesting kind of connection that I appear it to be right now, there's no definitive claims that I can make. I just want to lay this out there because there may be more that meets the eye that would provoke such an immense amount of people congregating to seems kind of very coordinated or, orchestrated, I would say, to have a mass amount of people, upwards of 80,000, all do this mass migration within the same day. And like you said, all kind of military age men. So there is this think tank called the American Enterprise Institute. Upon looking at them, they also had the same ideas about Somaliland, that encouraging the United States government, particularly the State Department, to recognize Somaliland's independence, like Israel has done. They are also pushing for primarily Marco Rubio to recognize Morocco's rightful claim to Ceuta and Melilla. Pardon me. So if we think about the, I guess, turmoil between the United States and Spain right now, it might also provide a different picture. Spain has been very outspoken about the genocide in Gaza, and also outspoken about the war in Iran, so much so that they denied airspace in Rota and Marun to the U.S., which is a strategic refueling point. Donald Trump has even come out and said that Spain is one of the worst NATO allies that he knows, primarily citing this altercation, not allowing them to be in the airspace for this reason. So the American Enterprise Institute, is also lobbying Marco Rubio specifically to recognize these claims. And they are lobbying a Representative Diaz-Balart, who in April of this year, let me go ahead and pull up there's a bill. This bill has not been voted on, so I just want to make that known. But within this bill, which is in the House Appropriations Committee, states clearly that the committee notes that the Spanish administered territories of Ceuta and Melilla are located in Moroccan territory and remain subject of Morocco's long-standing claim. So this is at the representative level, where they are also pushing for Marco Rubio, the State Department, to take diplomatic attempts to rectify this issue with Spain, aka Spain release the territory that they claim to be occupied, this representative. So I find that to be very, very interesting at the time when this takes place, and it kind of, I would say, for lack of better terms, humiliates the state of Spain and their inability to remain sovereignty of Ceuta. Even the Spanish president Sanchez has claimed this to be flagrant disrespect of sovereignty. Now they're stating that was done on Moroccan side. And to be clear, Morocco has more than enough grievances that they can appear to be legitimate for them to also turn a blind eye to this coordinated migration. So I found this to be very interesting, and I wanted to lay this out for you. It was also written in a Hungarian conservative who lays this out point by point, these different points where it talks about the Representative Diaz-Balart's April bill that he submitted. It doesn't state specifically the lobbying group, the American Enterprise Institute, but I find that very interesting that they have both the same motive for Somaliland, which we saw how that unfolded, which is a very important point to access the Red Sea. If they have some kind of military defense against the Houthis, and what the Houthis have, basically blockaded the Red Sea, very, very interesting. Same thing with the Strait of Gibraltar, very, very important spot of land. If they can have an ally on their side, which we've seen Spain kind of exercising its own sovereignty and making claims such as what's happening in Gaza is a genocide, not allowing for weapons to be sent to Israel, not allowing for their airspace in Rota and Marun to be used to send weapons into Israel from the U.S. And now this current friction between the U.S. and Spain, which is not allowing Rota and Marun to be used during the Iran conflict.
I really find that very interesting, Morgan. This was a dimension that I was not aware of until you mentioned it at airtime. But it certainly makes you wonder whether the CIA was involved in coordinating this with Morocco. which is just obscene if that is the case. I mean, I understand that the Trump administration does not like the fact that European countries are very they want to have nothing to do with this goofy war in Iran. That's just kind of an insane thing to start with. But the idea that we would sell out Western civilization in an area where they won that fair and square, and they won it to prevent Christians from being sold into slavery. Now, this is not part of American history. We don't discuss this. It's, we're supposed to believe that somehow slavery started in this country and we spread it around the world or something. Slavery, in historical terms, existed briefly in the United States. I mean, now it was hundreds of years, but in historical terms, it was a very brief period that we engaged in slavery, and we didn't create it. We imported people who were already enslaved, and we brought them in from Africa. But you go all the way back, and slavery has existed in both Africa and the Middle East since before there was written record to, just basically from the beginning of time. And so here you had an instance where by virtue of capturing those strongholds that are still held to this day, they were able to get control of the Barbary pirates. And of course, it took some, hundreds of years to actually control the problem entirely. The United States finally put an end to the predations of the Barbary pirates when Thomas Jefferson sent the fleet and sent the Marines and made history. But the idea that we would just sell that historical legacy for some short-term political payoff to AIPAC and the Israeli lobby is so disheartening that anyone would betray Western civilization in that way. These are places that should never change hands, as long as Western civilization exists at all.
Yeah, I know. I find it very, very ironic. I know that there has been a legitimate and I guess maybe, things can be exploited, I would say, by, foreign intelligence, American intelligence, the EU's intelligence, all different, the natural grievances can be exploited to the point where they are used, in kind of a manipulated manner. So Morocco's had this kind of tension already. And so I found it interesting about bringing up the Somaliland aspect because it kind of shows you more of the geopolitical project that's happening to try and, right now we have this blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. How do we negotiate that to where we kind of have more power in different regions and we exert our power over how strong and, needed the Strait of Hormuz is? I think that plays a key role. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
You're right.
Very, very interesting, the different aspects. And I am no way making any definitive claims. I just want to say that these instances are occurring and that there is pressure being put on the State Department to recognize these two areas as Moroccan territory. And Ceuta then experiences this mass migration, occurrence where you have tens of thousands of people in a single day, basically overwhelming the authorities there. And
it was obviously orchestrated. It wasn't, this this doesn't just happen in a day. You know, if it's a spontaneous thing, it could it could start with, you know, some people going across, and then it builds and builds, and over a period of weeks it becomes greater and greater. This was an orchestrated invasion. You don't just get 60,000 people to come out of nowhere. I mean, even in Morocco with their robust population, you don't just say, okay, you know, ready, set, go, here's 60,000 people. And that's what happened.
Mhm.
This was planned, it was orchestrated, and I find it very intriguing what you're saying about the U.S. trying to use this as bribery material, using these extremely important locations on the Moroccan coast to bribe Morocco into recognizing the state of Israel,
Mhm.
which
Or bribe Spain. Morocco already is a
yeah,
strategic ally with
well,
Israel.
well, but they're trying to bribe Morocco into signing on to the Abraham Accords.
Mhm.
Now they're also trying to leverage Spain into letting us use their airfields to launch this surprise attack on Iran, which we've been, you know, now following up on now for the last 6 months.
Mhm.
So it works in both, you know, works to leverage the Moroccan government, and it works to pressure the Spanish government at the same time.
Mhm.
And you know, where do the American people come into play in all of this?
Mhm.
We're a Western nation. We are, you know, predominantly a Christian nation, with Christian values, and not to diminish. You know, I have nothing. I've got many Muslim friends, and I certainly don't want their lands destroyed and so forth. But at the same time, our way of life stems in many ways from the Christian ethos. And so I don't want to see that destroyed. But the idea that we would trade off places that go back to the year 1450. I mean, this is before Christopher Columbus was even born, that they had captured this, and the idea that somehow we've got American congressional officials claiming that, oh yeah, they've got a historical claim to it. Well, my gosh, you know, the Sioux Indians have a historical claim to New York. Why don't we just give the Sioux Indians, or let's see, what is it? The Mohawks. It's the Mohawks. The Mohawks were up in New York. I guess they were the main tribe. Why don't we just give New York to the Mohawks and tell everybody to get out? Everybody else get out. You know, we've got a few hundred Mohawk Indians, and they're gonna retake New York. You can go back in history and you can create absolute chaos, which is what we seem to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I found this all very interesting because oftentimes there are more things that meet the eye than, you know, what the media will portray. And so finding that especially this bill that has been, you know, placed in April, I know that there is a lot of tension between Spain and Israel already prior to the what's the genocide in Gaza, with their vocal stance on against what's happening in the West Bank. And it's very interesting. Some of these think tanks refer to what Spain is doing in Ceuta as an illegal occupation, that there are 170 settlers, and it was just like the terminology was so interesting, and kind of it just was lighting off like weird, this seems very nefarious in my eyes, that a think tank that can recognize or say, okay, this is an illegal occupation, or these are settlers, but have the mum and hush about the West Bank. It seems like there may be ulterior motives, as opposed to they just have this righteous kind of stance against, different people owning different lands. And so I thought that also kind of triggered my brain to be like, okay, well, how did they feel about Somaliland? Looked at it, and then yes, they are also pushing for the US to recognize Somaliland. So it kind of seems like they're working for a particular country.
Let me, Somaliland is nothing. I was in DC doing something, and I ran into a very high official of Somaliland, and we were talking. What do you do? What do you do? And he said, "Well, I'm such and such a Somaliland." I said, "Well," he said, "You've heard of it, have you?" He presumed I hadn't heard of it. I actually had heard of it, because I knew about the idea of creating a Somaliland. And it really is just a sliver of Somali territory. But he obviously he had no connection really with Somaliland. He had been there, and I think had some businesses or something. But you could tell it was nothing, and it was, well, we got this idea, we're kind of going to throw this thing together. And so Israel basically created an enclave of another country, and because Israel controls this vast AIPAC organization with all the congressmen, all the senators taking money from AIPAC. The next thing, this non-entity that has no historical basis, nothing, all of a sudden is created out of nothing. And we're saying, oh yeah, everybody should recognize Somaliland. It's sort of, to some extent, it's the way that Israel started. If you think of it, Israel didn't exist in 1948. And then, and basically you had Jewish people from Europe who emigrated to go and get free land, belonged to somebody else. The people who had farmed it and built their homes and so forth, and they were all driven out. Their farms were stolen, their homes were stolen, and you had these European Jewish people who moved in and basically just stole the country. Yeah. So that was the history of Israel, like it or not. That's where it came from.
Yeah, I think it's very important to kind of broaden the scope and see kind of the tensions that are already there, the tensions may be exploited, who seeks to gain from these tensions being exploited. And it's on the record that according to the Abraham Accords, they want Morocco's to have regained that territory, and that is, it's pushing the United States to formally recognize those territories. I found that to be all very interesting. Now I know that we are wrapping near the show, so I know that we wanted to touch a little bit upon the Iran war that has now picked back up again. So we can kind of just briefly talk about that, and then we'll kind of end the show.
Yeah. I guess we're at the six month point. President Trump keeps saying, well, we're going to do more and bigger and better, and they're on their knees, and there's no evidence really to support the idea that Iran is on its knees. There's no evidence to suggest that the people of Iran are anything but totally unified. I mean, I'm sure there are people who dislike their government. Half of the people in the United States dislike our government, whether it's Republican or Democrat. You know, it's something like close to half.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same in Iran, but the media has portrayed it as though, well, you know, the Iranian government's going to collapse in no time. That's baloney. So what's happening is there is an enlargement of the war.
Mm-hmm.
There have been drone attacks on American ships. American ships have been hit in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And there are just a number of places where war is breaking out. In Jordan, it's interesting, there was a major petition by public figures, petitioning the king of Jordan to get away from U.S. bases, get the U.S. bases out of there. Jordan is interesting because it's controlled by a dictator. He's a king. You know, we always like our dictators to call themselves kings, and but Jordan, a large portion of the population of Jordan are Palestinian refugees driven out when the Jewish people took over Israel and drove them out. And so those people are very uncomfortable with the idea that here Jordan, the king of Jordan, has authorized U.S. planes to use Jordan as a base with which to attack Iran. So you see, this is beginning to grow and grow. You had an Iranian ship that was attacked. Well, let's see, was it an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea that was?
You probably know more than I do. Pardon me for not having that.
I think it's an Iranian ship that was sunk in the Caspian Sea by Ukrainian drones that crossed over, non-Ukrainian territory to attack it. And so you now see a close alliance between Ukraine and Israel in waging this joint war, which there've always been hints that the two wars were interconnected in ways that are not clear to me entirely. But so you see a broadening and expansion of the war to becoming more and more globalized as time goes on. And that's what I've dreaded from the beginning.
Yeah, it's very, very concerning. Well, thank you for your expertise today, Senator, and thank you for allowing me to kind of use you as a sounding board for this other kind of ulterior motive of what's going on really in Ceuta with Spain and Morocco. And maybe we'll find out more, see the developments of that, and who seeks to benefit from kind of the disruption and chaos that is unfolding over there.
Yeah. So. Okay. It's fascinating. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we will see you next week.
Bye, Senator.
Bye.